Both.
I'll start. Good evening to all of you. President of the day's function, Shri Ashok. Keynote speaker, Professor M.L. Aktas. Chairman of the Governing Council, Professor Basavaraj Ayya. And principal of this institution, Professor Satish. Program coordinator, Professor Konnur. And IQAC coordinator, Professor Rajat. Members of the faculty, delegates, both domestic and international, students, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I am extremely thankful to this institution for extending me this invitation to share some of my thoughts on a very vibrant, evergreen subject that is on entrepreneurship and innovation. The institution itself, as I understand, is a best example of entrepreneurship and innovation. They have been serving the society for the last almost 90 years and above. Hats off to those people who had a vision to start this institution in 1930s. And over a period of time, they themselves have innovated and contributed immense value to the society, keeping in mind the different segments and parts of our society. As we all know, in India, our social structure is totally different. But this institution has stood itself to help the cause of education and for upbringing the poor people. Now, my association with this institution is almost more than 3 decades. I have been visiting this institution, Seshadripuram group of institutions, in one capacity or other for seminars, conferences, then as a university authority for affiliation visits. And then I was also a governing council member representing Bangalore University in the Seshadripuram Degree Evening College for about 3 years. Therefore, when Mr. Harsha called me, sir, you have got to, give us a talk on entrepreneurship and innovation, I readily accepted, though the time was very short, just almost less than a week. But still, I said, I have to share some of my thoughts. So, friends, as I said just now, this is an evergreen subject, evergreen. If you look into the literature of entrepreneurship and innovation, especially on entrepreneurship, lots and lots of literature is available. At least somewhere I was referring, 30 crore citations are available on entrepreneurship. You can imagine, you have given me 30 minutes to share my thoughts, how difficult it would be to share this. But before I speak on entrepreneurship, I would like to say a few words, a couple of minutes on what we are today at the global level. At the global level, there are big challenges for the humanity. At this time, the question for humanity is virtually every country in this globe are revolving around contradictions and issues of meaning and meaninglessness, truth and reality, poverty and wealth, governance and insecurity. All types of insecurity, job insecurity, income insecurity, health insecurity, environmental insecurity. That is the situation now at the global level. And economic stability and greed, occasioning harm. And there is a crisis of leadership and insurrection in many places, rising radicalism and use of terror. This is the global picture of humanity as of today. Apart from this, we are facing a major challenges. One is the diminishing resources. Second is climate change. Third is environmental degradation, which never in the previous millenniums. And the latest one, COVID challenges. COVID challenges. Just few minutes ago, when Professor ML was speaking, I got a news that one professor, a good friend of mine, lost his life because of COVID from Davangere University. So this is where, friends, we are living in a world of uncertainty and fear. Every minute we are in uncertain and we are in fear. So this is the state of affairs. Under this background, today we have to discuss about future, that is entrepreneurship and innovation. Wonderful. So I feel, let us hope God will definitely bless all of us, and we will be able to come out of this pandemic, and let us see how it works. Now, as I said, this is a subject, when I am trying to speak, I see it from different dimensions. Some of those participants or delegates, they can do further research on this. So there is some big research potential. That's what I said, evergreen subject. A big research potential in this subject. And secondly, for those students who are participating, what is it for them? Tomorrow they have to become entrepreneurs. They have to innovate. So I keep these two dimensions in the thoughts which I am going to present to you at the moment. Friends, as I said, this is a subject which has grown over a period of time. If you look into the literature, entrepreneurial studies have come from different disciplines. There are people from economics who have spoken on entrepreneurship, who have did a lot of research on in the entrepreneurship and innovation. There are scholars from psychology, scholars from sociology, engineering, decision sciences, management. Therefore, this is a subject which has a multidisciplinary approach, and people from different disciplines have looked at this entrepreneurship from different dimensions. However, Joseph Schumpeter is considered to be the pioneer of this entrepreneurial studies, where he says the role of entrepreneur is described as a hero of, he is considered as a hero of capitalist drama. He is considered as a hero of capitalist drama. He is of the opinion that capitalism moves forward and provides opportunities through innovation. So he talks about 5 disruptions which entrepreneur will be able to contain. 5 forms of innovation. 5 forms of innovation. One is innovation of a new product. This is what Schumpeter has said, but this is undergoing a change, as we have seen. Just now, our keynote speaker has said, we are talking more on services. Okay, but this is the study done about 100 years, around 100 years, about 100 years, where the 5 elements or 5 forms of innovation. Introduction of new product. Secondly, new method of producing an existing product. And the third one, new form of organization. And the fourth one, new source of raw material supply and new market. So an entrepreneur becomes, rather contributes in any one of these forms or all forms to make the existing system disruptive and come out with innovative ideas to stay in the market. So according to him, any change that brings increase in profit can be called innovation. Any change that brings an increase in profit can be called innovation. This is 100 years ago. But now our keynote speaker has rightly mentioned that innovation should contribute for social good, for create economic value, should contribute for social good, economic value, and environmental value. See how this has shifted from economic value. Today we are talking about social value and environmental value. That is the reason why I said this is a subject which is evergreen. Then the other studies have come from psychologists, and the most famous study of this is of David McClelland. David McClelland, who says entrepreneurs come into the business because of their achievement motivation. So it talks about people have got inner motivation to do something. So his contribution is on achievement motivation. Then in 1960s, 62, Everett Hagen, his theory, he highlights psychosociological dualism. Psychosociological dualism, this is very much fits into Indian context. Psychosociological dualism between traditional peasant society, that is a farmer society, and modern technological progressive society. See, this is psychological and sociological dimensions for this. Now, in a peasant society, in a peasant, P-E-A-S-A-N, peasant society, there is a high need for affiliations. This society need for affiliations and a high need for dependency. They depend on one another, and they are having good relationship and affiliations. Whereas in the modern technological progressive society, there will be a high need for autonomy, and high need dominance, high need for autonomy and high need for dominance. So this is where exactly he brings in relationship between entrepreneurs and the transforming society from peasant society to industrial and then to technological society. Then another great contribution has come from Hofstede. Hofstede is a sociologist. He says culture plays a crucial role. It is the culture. You cannot compare an entrepreneur of England or America or of South Africa or Africa to an Indian entrepreneur. We are bound by our own culture, customs, traditions. So therefore, Hofstede says culture plays a crucial role in the growth of entrepreneurship. Culture plays a crucial role in the growth of entrepreneurship. Now he talks about 5 dimensions or factors which help and which contribute for the cultural progress of entrepreneurship. One is the power distance. Second is uncertainty avoidance, individualism, masculinity, and time orientation. See, each one, as I said, this is a very interesting and a very big subject, and I can talk at least 2 hours on each one of these factors. But due to constraints of time, I only leave at this just to make a mention that contribution for entrepreneurial studies have not come from one discipline, but it is from multi-disciplines. So that is the Hofstede's contribution, who is a sociologist. Then comes Tom Pernas, 1994. He establishes the relationship orientation and their impact on entrepreneurship. After this, the fag end of the 20th century, many studies have come from Curzon, Levinston, Drucker, Peter Drucker, Timmons, Pope, and Bronstein, and many more. So what I meant to say, that the subject of entrepreneurship has been undergoing a change from different dimensions in different points of time under different circumstances. Why I'm saying different circumstances? Because when I go into the next area, you will see that how entrepreneurship has come up in COVID situation also. Now that one way COVID is affecting health of many people. At the same time, there is a group of people who are looking this for a social good, coming forward to help the society. So there is a social entrepreneurship here also. So this is how, as there's a reason why I said this is a subject which is evergreen and enormous scope for further research into this area. It is continuous. Now, one thing that we understand from this studies is that the countries which have become rich, they have become because of entrepreneurial talent, because of entrepreneurial power, talent. And there is also a study which says that entrepreneurship can transform a country from poverty to prosperity. Entrepreneurship can transform a country from poverty to prosperity. I'll give a small example. 1960, if you see the South Korea, their per capita was $1,700, and they had only 2 institutions of science and technology. In the next few decades, with their persuasive policies, they have now a per capita of $29,000, and also they have global brands today. So this is how entrepreneurship can transform a country from poverty to prosperity. So that is another example. Then coming to there is a conventional wisdom, especially among researchers and academicians in Indian context. I have also made some studies and also gone through some studies in Indian context where they say entrepreneurship can be developed in the institutions, fine, and this has impacted many at the different points of time. So to develop entrepreneurship, they have made lots of suggestions to the government, and government has also come forward to take up these suggestions. And they say that by giving concessional finance or giving low rates of taxation and subsidizing the land at a lower rate and giving training for entrepreneurs to the graduates and others to become entrepreneurs. This sort of suggestions have come from many academic studies, and government also has taken them very seriously and has implemented. So this is where I want to tell the younger generation, especially the students who are now in pursuing their courses, they can also think of looking at what are these incentives which are extended by the government for becoming entrepreneurs or to begin with the startups. This is the word which we are using often, startups. So from this dimension, lot of opportunities and potential is available. Coming to, I will, for a moment, I will take you to what is this innovation? What is this innovation? Madam has rightly said that innovation should bring in economic value, social value, and environmental value. However, there are some other studies where you find these entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are of a different mindset. They are the people who are ready to take the risk. I will narrate some of them. Number one, they are with an open mind. They are with an open mind not with a closed mind. They are open. They are with an open mind and a curious mind. They are with an open mind and a curious mind. They want to know why it is happening, how to attack this, how to solve this problem. So they are with an open mind and a curious mind, and they are not perfectionists. They are imperfectionists, but they have a high degree of tolerance for ambiguity. See what happens is a normal rational thing. If anything happens, we are immediately, we lose heart and we, discontinue the activity. We are more afraid of the criticism that our friends make. So this type of things. But these entrepreneurs are imperfectionists, no doubt, but they have a high degree of tolerance for ambiguity. Then they have a knack of seeing the problem from multiple lenses. They will not see the problem from one dimension. They have the knack of seeing this problem, same problem, from different dimensions. And they experiment relentlessly, continuously, relentlessly. And they practice show and tell, because storytelling begets actions, begets action. So these are some of the latest studies, especially of Robert McClellan's, who mentions about these attributes in the entrepreneurs. So they are with an open mind, curious mind. They are ready to take any problem. They see it from multidimensional lenses, and they tolerate ambiguity, and they experiment relentlessly. And so this is here. So a person who was earlier, if you look into the type of entrepreneurship which has happened in India in the say in the early 20th century and also mid 20th century, you find that entrepreneurial decisions in India were taken more on gut feeling and intuition. If you see any business houses, Tatas or Birlas or Mafatlals or Singhanias, any of this, you will find there is a big Lala behind. When I say Lala, a big business leader or a head of the family who has started the business, continued to do the business, but based on intuition and gut feeling. But today, in addition to that, the entrepreneur of the 21st century is totally different. He should be different because of the challenges technology is posing. Madam was rightly mentioning, technology is the biggest challenge. If you do not, sail with the new technology, I think you will be exit. That is the competition that you have got to face. And today, even big multinational companies are facing problems in their survival. So this is the type of challenges which we are facing, which entrepreneurs will face, and in future also. So the point which I want to mention now, what is entrepreneurship? How India is responding to this entrepreneurship in the recent times. Now, if you look into some of the achievements, I'll call it as an achievement or a progress made by our country on this entrepreneurship and innovation. I'm very happy to share that India is ranking 48th position in what is called Global Innovative Index. It is now on a 48th position. Now, in 2015, the information which I have got here, I would like to share. In 2015, our rank was 81 rank. But by 2020, our rank has come to 48. That means we have jumped almost 33 ranks in the last 5 years. So this is where some entrepreneurship and innovation is happening. Now, this Global Innovative Index is developed and applied, ranking for 130 countries. 130 50 countries are being ranked on a set of 80 indicators. There are 80 indicators on which weightage is given and ultimately rank is decided. And these 80 indicators are again divided into 5 major indicators, which I would like to place before you. One is innovation in institutions, human capital and research, infrastructure developments, market sophistication, and business sophistication. I repeat, 5 major indicators are called groups, 5 groups of indicators. One is on institutions, second is on human capital and research, third is on infrastructure, market sophistication, and the last one is business sophistication. In addition, the innovation output, there is a sub-index also, which includes 2 innovative measures. One is knowledge and technology output. I repeat, knowledge and technology output, and creative output. Knowledge and technology output and creative output. Now, why I am saying all this is, if you see the last 5 to 6 years, the progress that the government has made, I have got some information which I would like to share. Now, in the last 5-6 years, innovation related initiatives are plenty. Some of them. One is national biometric, which we call unique identity. That's called Aadhaar card. Aadhaar card, which we say general nomenclature is Aadhaar card. Secondly, there is what is called direct benefit transfer. Direct benefit transfer of nearly 450 Government of India schemes. There is what is called where the beneficiary is getting direct benefit from the state government or from the central government. So direct benefit scheme. And they have opened 5,800 Atal Bihari, is our Vajpayee, Atal Tinkering Labs, and 500 plus incubators and about 50,000 startups in the last 5 years. 50,000 startups. Now, this is possible. Why I'm saying is India today is having an advantage of demography. It is one of the youngest countries in the world. The statistics speak that nearly 50% of our population are in the age group of 18 and 35. So this is the demographic dividend which we have at this moment. And if India has to progress further, I hope so it will, once the COVID is over, it has got ample opportunities, a big potential to further improve its ranking and come one among the first 10. Or that is I am an optimist. I always look at it. Now the second important contribution for this is there is what is called STEM. That is the graduates of STEM. That is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So there is a large number of students who are coming out with these different backgrounds, who are ready to accept the challenges. That's why we see a lot of startups today. And you all know, Bangalore is one of the important, and we are the number 1 in the country as far as startups are concerned. So that is where exactly who are these people who are starting? Mostly these people are coming from the STEM. But if you look into the previous history of business in India, you will find that most of these entrepreneurs have come from business families. So that is where there's a very big debate which went on, and now there's settled down. That's the debate is whether entrepreneurs are born or made. Now the debate is settled. Entrepreneurs can be made, and there is ample evidence to show that that entrepreneurs need not be from business families, even from other families. That's what I said. That those who have got the capacity to see an open mind and a curious mind. So this is how I have seen this aspect. The next is $190 billion knowledge-based export services have happened in the last 5 years in IT and ITES sector, IT-enabled services. 1,900 billion knowledge-based export services. This points out to the Indian strength of human and entrepreneurial capital. And the significant contribution has come from technology outputs and market sophistication. India has a big potential in some of the, I should say, major areas, which are biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, automotive components, IT and ITES services, softwares. These are some of the areas where India has a big potential. Already, you know, for the COVID vaccine, for the COVID vaccine and the medicine which is being, it has come from our biotechnology labs. We are able to today supply some of these things to the needy countries in the world. So India has a big potential, and it can be a leading innovative player in years to come. Definitely in the key economic sectors, which are biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, we are already leaders, automotive components, IT and IT-enabled services. Just now I was mentioning $1,900 billion of IT and ITES exports and softwares. So this is the biggest strength that India is having at this point of time. Now, this ranking, if you look at from a critical point of view, how best we can further progress. Because when I gave an example of South Korea, they are the 11th rank. They are at the 11th rank in the Global Innovative Index. We are at 48, but they are at 11th. So there is enormous scope for India to progress further into the better rank. So for this, what India has to do? Number one, it has to increase its spending on R&D, research and development. At the moment is a very, very paltry sum of 0.88% of GDP. Our investment on R&D is just 0.88% of GDP. When if you compare with Israel, they spend about 30 to 50% of their money for research and development. So if at all we have to progress further, we have to invest more on R&D. Secondly, access to reliable, high-speed ICT to the remote parts of India. ICT, when I say information communication technology. So our infrastructure has to be improved. You know, now being sitting here in Bangalore at this point of time, we had initial hiccups in our own infrastructure for this webinar, that the speech was not clear, all these things. So the point is that we have to provide greater access, greater and reliable access, and speed up the ICT. Third one, the latest one, the new education policy which has been released by the government of India in the last December 2020 has given a wonderful suggestion to bring in all institutions which are engaged in research and also in education to come together and to help the startups. And for this, the innovation should come from public science and technology systems, higher educational institutions, startups, and large corporations. So all these things have to come together to improve our innovation capabilities so that we can perform better. Now, another interesting dimension which needs to be done is protecting intellectual property rights. You know, when once, especially we are moving into a knowledge economy and a knowledge industry, in a knowledge industry, it is your intellectual property which is to be protected. If there is no proper legal system and legal protection, then it will be very difficult for anybody to progress in this line. Hence, it tells upon the appetite for risk investors. See what happens when there is no proper protection, legal protection. Nobody wants to, get into the problem of this type. So therefore, if at all we have to progress, there must be good intellectual property protection has to happen. It is happening, but still it is to be further strengthened. Then India has to use cutting edge global technologies to build up support ecosystems to solve local and real problems, life prime problems. So here I would like to say a few words on some of the, in one particular literature where they were coming up, the author talks about what is called positional entrepreneurs. The author is talking about what is called positional entrepreneurs. So we talk about economic entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and now they talk about positional entrepreneurs. Now, the author is of the opinion that positional entrepreneurs are those, especially in poorer countries, the poor people who have got a fire in their belly have to become entrepreneurs, right? For survival, to meet their both the ends. And this, when I see this from an Indian context, I find there is some reality and there is some truth in this. You go to any small town, or even in Bangalore, you can see, or in any other village, you see a lot of people entering into this, positional entrepreneurs. When I say small businesses like fruit vendors, vegetable vendors, flower vendors, milk, and such other, and especially, this COVID has, where people have lost jobs. Many unorganized people and people working in the unorganized sector lost jobs. There are a lot of reports in the newspapers. Even, people who had some jobs, they lost. So for their survival, they have to do something. Either, start a small shop selling vegetables or fruits or, milk or whatever it is. So this author says that there is what is called a positional entrepreneurs whose work is not properly rewarded in this country. So there is a scope for further study on this and government's support for encouraging this, because they are also contributing directly or indirectly for the growth. So that is another interesting dimension. And next is invest extensively in physical infrastructure. So that is a very important dimension that has to happen. Our infrastructure, if you look into the last budget, I think a substantial amount has been earmarked for infrastructure development. So we are not politicians. I'm telling you, this party, that party, I don't want to get into those arguments. But I see the country as a whole, as an academicians and researchers, that the plan is good. But when it comes to implementation, how the government is going to handle it, it's going to give us or reveal to us how things will be going to take shape in times to come. So therefore, friends, India has a big potential to be the global innovative leader in years to come. Now, I will also give you one or two examples where we are already doing some wonderful innovative work. So one thing which I would like to mention, 2 or 3 aspects only, there are many. The important one I would like to mention. There is something called SigTuple, a company, a software, which is addressing the issue of access to low-cost screen-based, I repeat, low-cost screen-based diagnosis based on blood sample, X-ray, retinal scans. Now, sitting at home, this information, if you can give, they are going to diagnose what is the problem, and they are going to diagnose, especially in a situation like the present one, lockdown, etc. This may help, provided we have a proper infrastructure. So already this something is happening, but it has to happen in a bigger scale. Now, secondly, there is another software, SatSure. SatSure, a very interesting one. It uses a combination of satellite data and weather data and information captured through IoT, that is Internet of Things, and drones. It is capturing information and simulating the information from data, weather data, then drones, and advises our agriculturists on water usage in their field, number one, crop maturity, number two, then pesticides, insecticides, which are to be given for the crop at what point of time. Next, it tells when the harvest has to be done and what is going to be the yield in a particular season. So this type of software, see now, if this software comes, is already there, but it has to be expanded. To imagine how technology and behind this technology, there an entrepreneur, the modern entrepreneur who is a tech and startup fellow who is ready to simulate all these things and come out with a new product or a service to help. So this is another example. Now another the third example which I would like to share is Haptik. Haptik is another service organization which has built world's largest conversational platform based on artificial intelligence. Just now our keynote speaker was mentioning the role of artificial intelligence is going to be very big in years to come. So artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, cloud computing, Internet of Things, machine learning, all these things are going to happen now. So that is how a country is progressing, and it has to. There's the minimum requirement which is essential to move forward. So that is where all these things, behind all these things is good infrastructure and good ICT. So that is how focus should be on that. Now this Haptik has built one of the world's largest conversational platforms based on artificial intelligence. Now what is it? It is 24/7 chat-based personal assistance. For instance, you can book a cab, buy flight tickets, pay utility bills, web check-in, phone recharge, etc., etc. So sitting in your home, you can do anything, and you will have a new experience as a customer. Otherwise, and the present situation, of course, COVID apart, if at all we have to do something, buy something, or we have to stand in queue and the whole day, be it banking or paying your utility bills or whatever it is. So sitting at home. So that's what I mean to say. Innovation. Innovation is a continuous process. It cannot stop. The day it stops, then the country will not progress further. Hence, friends, these are some of the developments which have taken over a period of time. Now I come to some are important. What are the challenges for the startups now under the COVID now? Fine. Everybody started very enthusiastic. Government support is there, lot of encouragement, incentives, etc., etc. But do you think startups are healthy now at this point of time? This is a very big question to be looked into. Now today, the startups do not have good financial strength. And on the other hand, they have got a big competition. And every startup comes into picture because it is coming with a disruption. And they want to compete and come out with new ideas and, provide new services to the customers and capture the market. You can see the payment system which we are making. So now that especially COVID has forced us, no, don't handle cash. You make payment through your, phone pay or UPay, Rupee, or whatever it is. So what I mean to say here is that things are changing. So these startups have come, and startups are, contributing, but they will have to face a bigger competition from bigger companies like Amazon, Google, Flipkart, Walmart and Flipkart, and many other things. So in the process, what is happening, whatever services these companies were offering to the customers, these bigger companies have also entered into the competition, and they are also competing. Now today, especially this Walmart and Flipkart and all these things, Future Pay, Amazon, etc., they are also into payment systems. They are also into home deliveries. They are also into sourcing. They are also in physical shopping, all these things. So the point is whether these startups, which have started with a great hope, will they be able to survive? So that is a very big challenge which some of the startups are facing today. But still, startups are definitely contributors, and they are disruptors. They come with new ideas, but at the same time, they require some support. So in the new dispensation, I don't know how things are going to take shape. It will be very difficult for the startups. So two things may emerge, that startups may be taken over or merged with these bigger companies, or they will have to sell and disappear. So these things are a bigger challenges for the country at this point of time. The government is making its best to help the startups, and also to provide lots of incentives for them to experiment, to come out with the new talents. All these things is happening, but as I said, competition. One has to withstand the competition and struggle. And I'm hopeful the younger generations are more innovative, and they've got all capacities to face the situation. And somebody says that when you are very much in a hard pressed, the best will come out from you. So whenever we are in a very difficult position, the best thing will come out from us. Let us hope that in years to come, that India will definitely progress. If it does not progress, I conclude by saying the word is that innovate or perish. Innovate or perish. So in 1950s, the great visionary, our person from our statesman from our state, Mokshagundam Vishvesvaraya, M. Vishvesvaraya had made this statement in 1950s, 56, industrialize or perish. Industrialize or perish. Today, I say now, you have to change that now, innovate or perish. Otherwise, you will not be able to survive. So these are some of my random thoughts which I wanted to share with you. And as I said, this is an evergreen subject, continuous, and there is big scope for further research in any discipline to which you belong, especially in social sciences and also in engineering and other areas. And for my young students who are now participating in this webinar, ample opportunities are there, but you must also have drive, enthusiasm, and boldness to accept the challenges and to serve. After all, there are big examples before us. You take either Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, or in India, our Narayana Murthy or Ajim Premji. They are all big examples which are before us, who have become great entrepreneurs and great business leaders. And I hope that you also take the lead and take our country to a better rank in years to come. Thank you very much, friends, for the opportunity. And I wish the institution all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for transmitting our mindset towards the theme of the webinar. Professor ML has left the webinar due to an emergency work. And in this webinar today, we have around 8 country participants across the globe. Now the floor is open for the interaction. As we are running out of time, We take up only few questions to moderate and to answer these questions from the chat box. I request Nagasudha Madam, Assistant Professor, to moderate this interaction session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vinay sir. Sir, questions are like this. How do we unlock new collaboration for innovation in entrepreneurship?
Okay. See, whenever you are talking about collaboration, first of all, you must be already in that particular field. I cannot, being a generalist, being a what do you call a person who is in the grocery shop, I cannot collaborate for technology immediately unless I understand the negative and the positive side and how technology is going to be helpful in that collaboration. This is happening, but whatever collaborations you look for, you should have a sound knowledge of both. And who is your collaborator? What is the what do you call the background of the collaborator? What is the success rate of the collaborator? And then you'll have to go. Otherwise, it will be difficult. I have seen many collaborations are falling because there is somewhere misunderstanding or the information is not very clear and all those things. So that is how I would look at it in the case of collaborations.
Thank you, sir. One more question. What are the entrepreneurial capabilities at the UG level?
Okay, wonderful. This is where I always say entrepreneur having, the undergraduate students who have come here, I have given you an example of positional entrepreneur. What is it, positional entrepreneur? As I said, my circumstances are forcing me to be an entrepreneur. For example, you look into the study of the biography of Dhirubhai Ambani. Dhirubhai Ambani, that is the father of Mukesh Ambani. You see his biography. He was an illiterate, but he had a fire in the belly. He wanted to achieve something. He wanted to do something. So therefore, that made him to become a great industrialist. Similarly, the undergraduate, see, I don't see graduate, undergraduate, SSLC and all those things. But do you have that seriousness, that sincerity to face the challenge? Because initially, definitely we are going to have certain challenges. Sometimes we may be upset. Sometimes we may run away. All these things that happen. For your information, let me tell you, the KFC, today, Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC stall. What is that life history of that person? He was a chef, he was a cook. And he tried 1008 recipes in a span of maybe, I don't exactly remember, 25 to 30 years, went on trying different recipes to win the heart of the customers. And ultimately was successful. And today it is a global chain. It was a global chain today. So therefore, we should not get disheartened. First of all, we must have that grit. Yes, I can do something. I want to do something. Number one. Number two, before you enter into any field, first my suggestion for you would be, first you work in that field for some time. 1 year, 2 years, try to understand what exactly it is. If you blind this thing, if you get into that, then it will be very difficult. You will have to learn it through trial and error. So instead of that, first you join as an employee. That is what happens. Why in our trading communities, you must have seen, Marwadis, Sindhis, and, Parsis, etc. What they do? The child, right from, whenever there is a vacation, the child will go and sit in the shop to learn how business is being done. So, classroom academicians teaching cannot be taken wholly granted, because teachers themselves are not entrepreneurs. in the business sense, because we don't have a practical experience. There may be some exceptions, but by and large, we are only sharing knowledge. So the undergraduate students who want to become an entrepreneur, that's a very good initiative, which a person, whoever has asked this question, but try to understand what it is. Suppose you want to enter technology. Okay, then what type of technology you want to do? Or you are enter into, costumes, ready-made garments, then understand what is the dynamics of this business. Or you want to enter into pharmaceuticals, then understand that. So try to and learn by experience, and then come out and enjoy and do, and keep in mind that profit alone is not the criteria. Whenever you have in mind that I want to help the society, start with this, definitely profit will come automatically. Suppose you start with a profit, then the danger of falling is more. This is my understanding. And there are many, I should say, examples which I can share on this. Yeah.